Breaking news from the Australian Open. Alexandra Eala has just won her match in a stunning upset, becoming the first qualifier to reach the quarterfinals in the tournament's history.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today, we are not talking about a tennis match. We are not talking about a forehand winner, a break point, or a trophy lift. We are talking about a shift. A seismic, unexpected, and frankly bizarre shift in the geopolitical landscape of professional sports that occurred quietly, then loudly, on the outer courts of Melbourne Park this week. If you look at the official scoreboard of the 2026 Australian Open, you will see a simple, unremarkable fact. Alexandra Eala, the 20-year-old rising star from the Philippines, lost. She lost in the first round. She was defeated by the American Alicia Parks in 3 sets. In the brutal, binary world of wins and losses, Alex Eala failed. She packed her bags. She booked a flight back to Manila. By traditional metrics, her tournament was a non-event. But we don't live in a traditional world anymore. We live in an economy of attention. And by that metric, the only metric that truly dictates the future of superstardom, Alex Eala didn't just win the Australian Open. She swallowed it whole. I want you to look at one number. Just one number that has left analysts, sponsors, and tournament directors scratching their heads in absolute disbelief. Before the tournament began, the Australian Open's official YouTube channel uploaded press conferences for the biggest names in the sport. We're talking about icons. We're talking about Novak Djokovic. We're talking about Carlos Alcaraz. And, of course, we are talking about Sabalenka, the world number 2, the defending champion, the juggernaut of women's tennis, a force of nature. Sabalenka's press conference video, it garnered about 8,000 views in the first 24 hours, a respectable number for a pre-match interview. Now, let's look at Alexandra Eala's press conference, a player who at the time had never played a main draw match in Australia, a player ranked outside the top seeds. Her video, 171,000 views. Let that sink in. 171,000 versus 8,000. That is not a margin of error. That is not a slight edge. That is a 2,000% difference. That is a statistical anomaly so massive it breaks a graph. Ben Rothenberg, one of the most respected journalists in the sport, looked at these numbers and asked a question that would have sounded insane 2 years ago. Is Alex Eala already the most popular player in women's tennis? Think about the absurdity of that question. She hasn't won a slam. She hasn't cracked the top 10. And yet, in the digital arena, the arena that decides Nike contracts, sponsorship deals, and TV ratings, she is currently eclipsing the reigning queens of the sport. This week in Melbourne, something broke. The system that tells us you must win to be famous malfunctioned, because when Alex Eala walked onto court 6, it wasn't a tennis match. It was a pilgrimage. It was a riot. It was a cultural coronation. The organizers made a mistake. They treated her like a generic qualifier. They put her on court 6, a small, outer court designed for quiet, intimate matches. They didn't realize they were trying to fit a tsunami into a bathtub. Thousands of Filipinos descended on Melbourne Park. They didn't just fill the seats. They climbed the fences. They packed the standing room 10 rows deep. They created a noise level usually reserved for a World Cup final, not a first-round tennis match on a Tuesday afternoon. And inside that cauldron, we saw something unprecedented. We saw the birth of a new kind of superpower in tennis. We usually look to Europe or the United States for the next big thing. We look for the next Serena, the next Sharapova, the next Swiatek. But we were looking in the wrong place. The sleeping giant of global sports fandom isn't in the West. It's in Southeast Asia. And it has just woken up. The whole world shocked. You better believe it. Because while Aryna Sabalenka is busy winning matches, Alex Eala is busy winning the world. Today we are going deep. We are ripping apart the numbers. We are going to analyze the court 6 siege. We are going to discuss the controversy of the crowd etiquette that is purest fuming. And we are going to ask the ultimate question. Is this the moment tennis changes forever? Is this the moment where the star becomes bigger than the sport? This is not just a match report. This is a case study on the arrival of a global icon. Buckle up. The era has arrived. The court 6 siege, a logistical failure. Let's start with the physical reality of what happened on Monday to understand the magnitude of this shock. You have to understand the geography of a Grand Slam. Melbourne Park is massive. You have Rod Laver Arena, the Coliseum where the champions play. You have Margaret Court Arena and John Cain Arena. These are the show courts. They have ticketed seating, security details, and capacity for thousands. Then you have the outer courts. Court 6, Court 8, Court 13. These are the working-class courts of the tournament. It's where the grinders play. It's where you can usually hear the squeak of sneakers because the crowd is so sparse. Tournament directors schedule matches based on a predictive algorithm of interest. If you are the world number one, you go to Rod Laver. If you are an unseeded prospect like Eala, you go to Court 6. It's standard procedure. But the algorithm failed to account for one variable: the Filipino diaspora. The Philippines is not just a country. In the sporting world, it is a global network. There are nearly 60,000 Philippines-born residents in Melbourne alone. And on Monday, it felt like every single one of them took the tram to Melbourne Park. Witnesses described the scene as claustrophobic. Long before Eala even picked up a racket, the pathways surrounding Court 6 were gridlocked. Security had to step in not to manage the match, but to manage the crush of human bodies trying to get a glimpse of a 20-year-old hitting a yellow ball. This is the Manny Pacquiao effect, transferred to a tennis court. For decades, when Pacquiao fought, the streets of Manila went silent and the crime rate dropped to zero. We are seeing the early germination of that same phenomenon with Eala. She isn't just an athlete to these fans. She is a projection of national identity. When she walked out, bedlam, flags everywhere, chants of "Let's go Alex," drowning out the matches happening on adjacent courts. This brings us to the controversy, and we have to talk about this, because it's the darker side of the rival. 2. The etiquette war, passion versus tradition. Tennis is a sport of silence. It is a sport of polite applause. You clap for a winner. You stay silent for a fault. You never, ever cheer when your opponent misses a serve. The crowd on Court 6 threw the rule book into the Yarra River. Reports from the ground and complaint from tennis purists on Twitter confirmed that the atmosphere was hostile for Alicia Parks. When Parks double faulted, cheers. When she hit an unforced error into the net, roars of approval. Alicia Parks, to her credit, admitted later that it was difficult. That is a diplomatic understatement. She was playing an away game in a neutral country. She was fighting not just Eala, but a wall of sound that wanted her to fail. This has sparked a massive debate in the tennis world this week. On one side, you have the traditionalists saying this is disrespectful, that it ruins the sanctity of the game. On the other side, you have the modernists who are saying, look at the energy, look at the passion. This is what tennis needs. If you want tennis to survive in the TikTok era, if you want to compete with the NBA and the Premier League, you cannot turn your nose up at this level of engagement. Yes, it was raw. Yes, it was perhaps unsportsmanlike at times, but it was alive. Compare that to the polite, half-asleep applause at some of the center court matches. The Eala match mattered. It had stakes that transcended the scoreline. 3. The match, the bagel, and the collapse. Now, let's analyze the actual tennis, because the scoreline tells a fascinating story of pressure and experience. The match started in a way that seemed destined for headlines. Eala came out of the gates firing. She took the first set 6-0. A bagel. In professional tennis, winning a set 6-0 against a top 100 opponent like Alicia Parks is a statement. It suggests total dominance. Eala was reading the big serve of Parks. She was moving the ball corner to corner, and she was feeding off that electric crowd energy. At that moment, 45 minutes into match, the hype seemed justified. It looked like she was going to steamroll her way into the second round. But tennis is a cruel mental game. Alicia Parks is not a novice. She has a massive serve, one of the biggest on tour, and she composed herself. In the second set, the momentum shifted. Parks stopped missing. She started hitting her spots. And suddenly, the pressure on Eala changed. When you are the underdog, you play free. When you are winning 6-0 and the crowd is screaming your name, suddenly you have something to lose. You tighten up. The unforced errors crept in. The serve percentage dropped. Eala lost the second set 6-3. Then the third set 6-2. She lost. But here's the critical insight. It didn't matter. Usually, when a prospect gets hyped up and then loses in the first round, the hype train derails. Sponsors back off. The media moves on. With Eala, the loss seems to have fueled the narrative. Why? Because the story isn't about her dominance yet. It's about her presence. The fact that she could bagel an established American player showed the potential is there. The collapse showed she is still young. But the crowd? The crowd never left. They stayed until the final point. They chanted her name while she was losing. That is the difference between a good player and a franchise icon. A good player has fans when they win. An icon has an army even when they bleed. For the Sabalenka comparison, the new metric of fame. Let's circle back to that YouTube statistic. 171,000 views versus 8,000 views. Aryna Sabalenka is a two-time Australian Open champion. She plays a brand of tennis that is terrifyingly good. She is charismatic, funny, and loud. She should be the biggest draw. So why is she losing the attention war to world number 49? It comes down to demographics and a hero void. Belarus, Sabalenka's home, has a population of 9 million. The Philippines has a population of 115 million. But it's not just raw numbers. It's about the hero void. In countries like the U.S., Spain, or France, sports fans are spoiled. They have Alcaraz, Nadal, LeBron, Mbappe, Biles. If one star loses, they just switch the channel to another. In the Philippines, the global sporting hero is a rare and precious resource. For 20 years, that resource was Manny Pacquiao. Every ounce of national hope was poured into his gloves. Now that Pacquiao is retired, that energy is looking for a new vessel. It tried to go to Kai Sato in basketball, but the NBA dream is still pending. It has found a home in Eala. She is the vessel. She is the chosen one. When Filipinos watch her, they aren't watching a tennis match. They are watching representation. They are watching their flag on a screen that usually ignores them. That is why she is more famous than Sabalenka in Australia right now. Sabalenka fights for herself and her team. Eala fights for 115 million people who are desperate to be seen. This is a marketing goldmine for the WTA Women's Tennis Association. The WTA has struggled to find the next big rivalries after Serena Williams retired. They have Swiatek, Sabalenka, Rybakina, the big three, but they are all from Eastern Europe. They appeal to the same general demographic. Eala opens up Asia, not just the Philippines, but the entire Southeast Asian market. Sponsors like Nike, Adidas, and Rolex are looking at those YouTube numbers and drooling. They don't care that she lost in round one. They care that 170,000 people clicked the video. What comes next? So where do we go from here? The news cycle confirms that Eala is leaving Melbourne immediately. She is flying back to Manila to play in the inaugural Philippine Women's Open, a WTA 125 event. This is a strategic masterstroke. She is going from a heartbreaking loss in Australia to a hero's welcome in Manila. This tournament was created because of her. Think about that. The WTA sanctioned a new tournament in the Philippines largely to capitalize on the Eala wave. She will likely win matches there. She will rebuild her confidence. And she will solidify her base. But the warning signs are there. We have seen this movie before, the Anna Kournikova effect. A player becomes a massive celebrity before they become a massive winner. It can be a trap. The media obligations, the photo shoots, the pressure to represent a nation, it can suffocate a player's development. Eala is at a crossroads. She has the fame of a world number one, but she has the game of a top 50 player. The next 12 months are critical. She needs to bridge that gap. She needs her forehand to be as loud as her fan base. We often talk about arrival in sports as a moment of victory. We say a player has arrived when they lift their first Grand Slam. We say they arrived when they crack the top 10. We tie the concept of arrival to the concept of conquest. But I would argue that Alexandra Eala has redefined what it means to arrive. To arrive is to be noticed. To arrive is to force the world to stop scrolling and start watching. To arrive is to make a first-round loss on a side court feel like the main event of the evening. In a sport that is desperate for personalities, desperate for new markets, and desperate for youth, Eala is the most important non-champion in the world right now. There were 128 women in the Australian Open draw. By the end of the tournament, one will hold the trophy. But on Monday night, on a crowded, noisy electric court 6, it didn't matter who held the trophy. It mattered who held the crowd. The 171,000 people who watched her press conference didn't click because they wanted to hear a winner. They clicked because they wanted to hear her. She is more than a tennis player now. She is a movement. She is a symbol. And yes, she is statistically, undeniably, more famous in Australia this week than the woman who owns a crown. The era hasn't just begun. It has already taken over. The wins? They will come. The trophies? They are likely a matter of time. But the stardom? The stardom is already here. Eala has lost a match, but she has won the war for our attention. And in the year 2026, that is the only victory that truly echoes. I'm your host. This has been our Deep Dive Special Report. Keep your eyes on the ball, but more importantly, keep your eyes on the girl from the Philippines, because the world certainly is. Good night.